They whispered her name in fear long before the first frost of winter set in. Agnes Crow. To the folks of Widow's Creek, she was a shadow at the edge of the lantern light, a tall, thin figure in a tattered black shawl, seen crossing the creek at dusk with a basket of strange herbs. They called her witch, hag, devil's bride. Mothers pulled their children close if she passed through town, and the saloon's laughter would die the moment her pale eyes swept the room. It hadn't always been that way. Years back, Agnes had been the young bride of a rancher named Samuel Crow, a man whose laugh carried on the wind. They'd carved a life together in a little cabin by the creek, and Agnes was known for her quick wit and quicker smile. But Samuel died sudden. Some said snakebite, others swore poison. And the town's suspicion turned its gaze on her. They whispered about how she knew the plants in the hills too well, how she could brew teas that calmed fevers or stopped a heart. By the second winter alone, Agnes had stopped coming to Sunday service. The children dared each other to run up to her gate and touch it, but none lingered long enough to see if she really had a wolf for a pet or if the candlelight in her window burned blue. That's how it stayed. Cold stares, slammed doors, until the fever came. It started in the schoolhouse, with little Annie Hargrove coughing up blood into her handkerchief. Within 3 days, 5 more children had taken to their beds. The doctor from the next town rode in, but his face was grim. "Some kind of lung sickness," he muttered, shaking his head. "Spreads fast. I don't know if I can stop it." By the end of the week, nearly a dozen children lay pale and shivering in their homes, and every mother in Widow's Creek knew the truth. If nothing changed, they'd be digging small graves before Christmas. That's when a figure appeared at the edge of town. Wrapped in her black shawl, eyes sharp as winter stars, Agnes Crow stood watching. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low but steady. "I know the cure." The air went still. You could have heard a pin drop in the dirt street. Sheriff Dawson stepped forward, hand resting on the butt of his Colt. "And why," he said, "should we trust the word of the witch of Widow's Creek?" Agnes didn't flinch. "You shouldn't," she said, simply. "But you will, if you want your children to see the spring." The silence after Agnes's words felt heavier than a winter storm cloud. Then Mrs. Hargrove pushed forward, eyes red from nights without sleep. "If you know something, you tell me now," she said, voice cracking. Agnes's gaze softened just a fraction. "It grows up in the high ridges," she said. "White flower root, stronger than anything in your doctor's bag. It'll break the fever if it's taken in time." She shifted her basket higher on her hip. "But it's late in the season. The snow's already started up there. If I go alone, I might not make it back." Sheriff Dawson's jaw tightened. "So you want an escort?" "I want someone who knows how to keep up," she replied, "and someone who won't shoot me in the back." There was muttering among the townsfolk, but in the end it was Tom Barlow, a young ranch hand whose little sister lay fevered, who stepped out. "I'll go," he said, strapping on his coat. The two of them left before dawn. The climb to the ridge was treacherous, wind howling like a wounded animal. Snow bit into their faces, and the rocks were slick with ice. Tom kept stealing glances at her, half expecting to see some wicked gleam in her eye. But Agnes moved with purpose, every step sure. Halfway up, they found wolf tracks. Tom's hand went to his rifle, but Agnes crouched beside the prince. "We're not the only ones desperate for food in winter," she murmured. "Keep close." By the time they reached the white flower grove, the snow was falling thick. The plants, delicate as spun glass, clung to the frozen earth. Agnes knelt, fingers working fast but gentle, digging the roots before the frost killed their potency. Then came the growl. Out of the tree line, a gray wolf padded into view, ribs sharp beneath its fur. Its eyes locked on them. Tom raised his rifle, but Agnes's hand shot out, gripping the barrel. "Don't!" she hissed. The wolf's breath fogged in the air. For a long, frozen moment, predator and woman stared at each other. Then slowly, the animal lowered its head, sniffed the snow, and turned back into the shadows. Tom stared. "How?" She didn't answer. She just gathered the last root, tucked it into her basket, and said, "Let's move." The journey back was worse. Wind screaming, snow blinding. Tom slipped once, nearly tumbling into the ravine, but Agnes caught his arm with surprising strength. They stumbled into Widow's Creek at dusk, frost clinging to their lashes. Inside the Hargrove home, Agnes brewed the roots into a bitter tea and coaxed it between Annie's cracked lips. She worked all night, moving from house to house, dosing each child, while their parents hovered in wary silence. By morning, the fevers had broken, but the cost had not yet been counted. When the first streaks of dawn painted the mountains pink, a hush fell over Widow's Creek. One by one, the townsfolk stepped from their homes, eyes wide with something they hadn't dared to feel in days: hope. Children who had been burning with fever just the night before now sat up in bed, their cheeks flushed not with sickness, but with the color of life. Mothers clutched them close, tears spilling freely. Fathers, silent and stiff-jawed, stood like men waking from a bad dream. Agnes was still in Mrs. Hargrove's kitchen, rinsing the last of her tools, when the door creaked open. Sheriff Dawson stepped inside, hat in hand. "They're saying it's a miracle," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "It's white flower root, not a miracle, just something most folks forgot how to find." He hesitated. "And the wolves?" A flicker of something, sadness maybe, passed over her face. "They remember me," she said simply. Word spread fast. By noon, the same people who had whispered witch behind her back were standing in the muddy street, hats clutched to their chests, waiting. When she stepped outside, basket on her arm, there was an awkward shuffle. Then Mrs. Hargrove came forward, pressing something into her hand. It was a single hand-carved candle. "For your window," she said, "so we'll know you're home." Agnes studied it for a long moment. Then she nodded, slipping it into her basket. "If you light it," she said, "it should be for warmth, not for fear." She turned toward her cabin, the wind catching her shawl, and the crowd parted to let her pass. From that day on, Widow's Creek never called her a witch again. They called her the woman who'd walked into the storm for their children and come back with the cure in her hands. And sometimes, on winter nights, when a candle burned in her window and snow swirled in the pines, folks swore they saw a gray wolf pacing the edge of the trees, guarding the healer of Widow's Creek.